All right, here is the first lesson of chapter 4. We got one more after that, and we're done with our colonial America, describing the importance of the Middle Passage and the characteristics of slave life in the 18th century. We looked at a video clip there that kind of populated that chart for us a little bit and described what that was all about. The Middle Passage, slave trade, West Africa to the Americas, most of it to Central and South America, and some to the colonies. Vastly important, significant in the cultural mixes that is going on here in the New World for several centuries. Essential question number 2. This is simple as well. We've got a chart and a graphic organizer we started looking at, breaking it down to 3 colonial regions and trade, commerce, soil, climate, geography, people in each of those colonies that are important for you to know and understand when it comes to our test. So make sure we got that done. Your home learning will be to make sure that chart is ready so that we can quiz on it in the scheduled date that I have posted for you online. And this chart does show pretty significantly where most of them are going. West Africa into most of the Central and South America, but we of course will be focused on British North America and the British colonies. The South and slavery, it is really the major reason why the South is successful economically. It is based on plantations and the plantation economy. Slaves are fairly expensive, and the cash crops that come off of these plantations enable plantation owners to pay for these expensive slaves. But you have them for an entire lifetime, and slaves born to slaves or children born to slaves by law are slaves. So it's a pretty profitable thing, to say the least, if you can get into it, if you've got enough money to buy one and grow a cash crop. Controlling those slaves is also highly important and very much a part of Southern life. Slave codes, as we talked about, and this is a little bit of a review. Remember Barbados and some slave owners kind of being pushed out and running out of space in British Barbados, coming to the Carolinas to raise rice. Eventually it's going to turn into other things, of course, tobacco in North Carolina, but cotton is coming very soon. These slave codes establish strict rules about how they can be treated and where they can go, what they can do or not do, education, no education really, can't teach them to read or write, that kind of thing. In terms of slave families and culture, families are often torn apart when they're sold, suffering quite often from harsh treatment pretty much across the board. They do, most of them, 95% of them do very hard labor in the fields. There are a few that work in bigger plantation houses, but they're all bought on an auction block, and what you see here depicted, displayed before everybody. They're prodded and they're poked and they're stripped of their clothes to see what they look like, if they're sick or if they have scars or any ailments, things like that. But when they come here, there is distinctly in the South a culture that they develop, and it mixes with white culture, but they keep a lot of their language and they keep a lot of their traditions, and it carries on for generations and generations after that into Southern culture. Some slaves can learn trades and become skilled workers. For example, if you were to go to George Washington's farm or his plantation, you would see that there is a special spot for leather makers, for blacksmiths, for people who are skilled in woodworking, and that was their job. But most of them, again, are working out in the fields and doing pretty heavy farm labor. Some do get their freedom because they are able to buy it. Depending on the slave owner, you can perhaps be allowed to, and depending on the colony, allowed to perhaps raise some food for yourself and sell it, or get somebody else to buy your freedom, and then you can be free and become a free person in the South. Not too many of those people are free in the South, of course. Southern society overall is depicted here in the chart. Only 12% of slaveholders had plantations with 20 or more slaves. However, yet more than half the slaves lived on those plantations. So that means that we have a significant amount of people, of slaves, a significant number of slaves that are owned by just a few people, which means a few people have a lot of power and a lot of money in the South. And so that's something that's significant about the Southern economy and society and politics. A few people have a lot of money, and when they have a lot of money, they also have pretty good access to, and perhaps are, the political leaders of their community, their parish or county and or state. Where are most of these plantations? Most of them are located along the coasts in what's known as the Tidewater region. As we move to the interior, this land and territory or land looks less flat and it becomes more hilly and undulated or uneven, and the soil becomes a little less good or a little less quality. But it's possible to raise some things. And of course, we're moving into our Appalachian Mountain region here. And so the number of slaves will be greater here, it'll be less here, and so therefore there'll be less slave-minded people and slave society associated people as you move inland toward the Appalachian Mountains. So it's here in this Tidewater region right there that we have most of the wealthy, powerful, big plantations, big houses, large acreage, maybe 1,000 acres, 500 acres. And again, they're the ones who are kind of controlling things politically and economically. Remember Bacon's Rebellion, Jamestown back in here, and the government in the East not necessarily taking care of the rights and the interests of those indentured servants that wanted to get land out here, conflicting with Native Americans, so on and so forth, right? Land values being different, higher over here in the East, and less valuable and a little bit more dangerous out in the West. This is Washington's Mount Vernon. If you were to pan to the left in that picture, you would see the Great Grand Potomac River, and this is his lawn and his back porch. This is located in the Tidewater region of Virginia, and this is a picture from the great oak tree that is just off to the side there. I took a nap under that oak tree. This is the other side of it, looking at the Potomac River, and this is the plantation society we're talking about, right? This is big money. This is big stuff. And there's a lot going on here, and these plantations were pretty self-sufficient. They pretty much could make and grow and develop whatever they wanted or needed and to be self-sustaining. And whatever was produced was shipped out on the Potomac, out here to the left and out to the Atlantic Ocean, to other colonies, and to even Europe, for example. Go to Mount Vernon if you ever get the chance. Pretty awesome stuff, to say the least. And again, a variety of things are going on here. Completely self-sufficient. Almost everything's made there. Good stuff. This is actually a picture of his grist mill. It's not his grist mill. It's a spot where his grist mill was. It's a rebuild, a recreation, in which there is a stream that runs from the backside over here and through the building and out the other side here. And there's a big wheel that turns that mechanism in there to grind up the corn and the wheat or barley or whatever he's making. And then he also made whiskey out of it, which was used as a type of money at that time. There's another region called the backcountry, right? Moving inland a little to the west. This is the region west of the Tidewater. It's a region of hills and forests farmed by newcomers, right? This is where our indentured servants and Bacon's Rebellion people were going, poor people, smaller farms, growing tobacco and corn, but less profitable, and you would see fewer slaves by owner if you did own slaves there because of the geography there. Again, usually 1 to 2 slaves farming alone out there in the further regions of the West, a little bit more disconnected from the East. Again, here's the graphic organizer that shows who's where in society. And again, as we talked about with Bacon's Rebellion, as that rebellion happened and the conditions in England improved, meaning less people wanted to be indentured servants and come to the New World, all of a sudden there was a shift and a move toward enslaved people as being a little bit better and a little more profitable. So this 4.1 matrix that we have here and that we're working on and for your home learning is something you need to complete. Make sure that it's ready to go for the quiz. Take a look at the exemplar samples that your classmates worked on, breaking down what's going on in each of those regions. Soil, climate, geography, commerce, which means trade, different types of farming, who's living there, what's unique to that particular region. We need to know where they're at and what colonies they include, which has been done on some map work already. Make hay, be productive, go ahead and get it done, be successful. We'll see you next class.